She lived a quiet life in a small town where most people kept to themselves. Her days followed a simple pattern. Wake up early, open the shop, sweep the floor, make coffee, and wait for customers who came more out of habit than need. She liked it that way. Quiet meant safe. Quiet meant no one asked questions. Her father had taught her that without ever saying the words. He believed that a peaceful life was built by staying unnoticed. He had said it often, usually with a calm smile and tired eyes. He never raised his voice, never bragged, never spoke about his younger years. He worked honest jobs, paid bills on time, and came home before sunset. He died when she was still young. The illness came fast and left no room for long goodbyes. After the funeral, people said kind things, but no one really knew him. That did not surprise her. Even as a child, she knew there were parts of her father that stayed locked away. The tattoo was one of those parts. She had been 12 when she first noticed it clearly. He had come home late, his shirt torn slightly at the shoulder. While cleaning a small cut on his arm, she saw the ink near his wrist. It was dark, sharp, and worn with age. A symbol she had never seen before. When she asked about it, he gently pulled his sleeve down and said it was from a long time ago. He told her not to worry and changed the subject. Years later, after he passed, she found an old photo hidden in a box. In the picture, her father stood beside men she did not recognize. Leather jackets. Hard faces. Motorcycles lined behind them. The same tattoo showed clearly on his arm. She stared at that photo for a long time. Before putting it back where she found it, she never asked anyone about it. Life moved on. She grew older, took over the small shop, and stayed close to the routines that made her feel steady. She never married, never left town. She carried her father's memory quietly, like a fragile thing that could break if handled too roughly. The tattoo, however, remained. Her father had insisted she get it when she turned 18. He said it was important, not fashionable, not for show, just important. When she questioned him, he only said that one day it might protect her. She thought he was being dramatic. Still, she agreed. The design matched his exactly, placed in the same spot. After his death, she considered removing it. Every time she looked at it, memories came flooding back. But something always stopped her. A strange feeling, like removing it would be a kind of betrayal. The day everything changed started like any other. It was late afternoon when the sound of motorcycles filled the street. The noise was loud, sudden, and out of place in a town that rarely heard more than passing trucks. People paused. Curtains moved. Doors closed quietly. She stood behind the counter, holding a cup of coffee, listening as the engines cut off one by one. Heavy boots hit the pavement. Low voices followed. Laughter that sounded careless. It's almost bored. They walked in like they owned the place. Leather jackets, chains, helmets tucked under arms. The smell of fuel and road dusts followed them inside. They did not shout. They did not threaten. But their presence alone changed the air in the room. She had seen biker groups before, passing through town, stopping for gas or food. This was different. These men were not passing through. One of them leaned against a shelf, scanning the shop slowly. Another walked straight to the counter and asked for a drink. His tone was casual, but his eyes watched everything. She kept her voice steady as she served him. She had learned long ago that fear showed through small things. A shaky hand, a rushed breath. She forced herself to move slowly. More customers left quietly. No one wanted trouble. Within minutes, the shop belonged to her and the bikers. They talked among themselves, not really including her, but not ignoring her either. Their eyes drifted back to her again and again, measuring, judging. One of them asked about the town. Another asked how long she had owned the shop. The questions felt harmless, but something underneath them felt sharp. She answered politely, without offering extra details as she reached for change. Her sleeve slid back slightly. The room went still. At first, she did not notice. She was focused on counting the money, on keeping her breathing even. Then she felt it. The sudden quiet, the way the air tightened. She looked up. Every biker in the room was staring at her wrist. The man at the counter froze mid-movement. Another slowly straightened from where he leaned. One of them whispered something under his breath. Her heart began to pound. She pulled her hand back instinctively, covering the tattoo with her other hand. "What is it?" she asked, her voice calm but careful. No one answered. An older biker stepped forward. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined by years on the road. He studied her with sharp focus, not like someone judging, but like someone remembering. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. Every warning her father ever gave echoed in her mind. He had always said that some questions did not need answers. "It belonged to my father," she said after a moment. The older biker swallowed hard. "What was his name?" She shook her head. "He's gone." That answer seemed to hit harder than she expected. The older biker stepped back slightly, his expression changing from curiosity to something closer to respect. Or fear. She could not tell. The others watched closely now, waiting. One of the younger bikers laughed nervously. "You serious?" he muttered. The older biker shot him a look that shut him up instantly. Her hands were sweating now. She felt exposed. Like the tattoo had suddenly become a spotlight she could not step out of. "I don't want trouble," she said. "I'm just running a shop." The older biker nodded slowly. "Looks like you already are," he said. Silence stretched between them. She thought of her father then, of the way he used to watch the road from the porch, of how he always noticed who passed through town, of how he taught her to read people without staring. For the first time, she wondered what he would say if he were standing beside her now. The older biker finally spoke again. "Your father," he said carefully. "He wasn't just anyone." Her chest tightened. "I know," she said, "but I don't know who he really was." The biker studied her face, searching for something. After a moment, he seemed to find it. "You've got his eyes," he said quietly. Another biker cleared his throat. "We should go," he said, uneasy. The older one nodded. He turned back to her. "Keep that covered," he said gently. "Not everyone deserves to see it." With that, they left. Engines roared back to life. The sound faded down the street, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than before. She locked the door and leaned against it, her legs shaking. For years, she had lived believing her father's past was buried. Now she knew it was only sleeping, and something had just woken it up the next morning. The town felt quieter than usual. She woke up to the sun slipping through thin curtains, casting soft lines on the floor. She made coffee slowly, stirring it without thinking. Her mind replayed the scene from the day before, the sudden silence, the frozen faces of the bikers. She had been so careful all her life, and yet, in one moment, her father's past had stepped into her quiet world without warning. She tried to push it aside, telling herself that the encounter was likely a coincidence. Bikers passed through small towns all the time. Perhaps it was nothing more than curiosity, she thought. But deep down, she knew it was not nothing. Something in their eyes had said more than surprise or recognition. It had said caution. Fear, respect. Her shop was empty that morning. The quiet gave her a chance to think. Really think about the tattoo, about the photo, and about her father. She sat behind the counter, tracing the familiar lines on her wrist, feeling the ink press lightly against her skin. For the first time, she felt a connection to a world she had been kept away from. A world she didn't know existed but had been a part of her father's life. Later, she opened the photo again. Her father stood tall, surrounded by men with rough faces and tough postures. Motorcycles lined up behind them, gleaming in the sunlight. They were not smiling for the camera. They looked serious, almost dangerous. The tattoo was clearly visible on her father's wrist. She ran her fingers over the image, remembering how he had always told her to respect it, to never remove it. At the time, she thought it was just a memory, a personal story that belonged only to him. Now she wondered if it was a warning. She decided to take a walk through the town, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The streets were mostly empty, and the morning air felt crisp against her skin. She passed by the gas station where bikers often stopped, half expecting to see someone from yesterday. There was no one. just the quiet hum of the town waking up. As she walked, she noticed a man leaning against a motorcycle outside a small cafe. He looked familiar in a strange way. Not from yesterday exactly, but like someone she had seen in pictures. The leather jacket, the way he carried himself, the calm observation of his surroundings, it all reminded her of the older biker. Her heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively pulled her sleeve down slightly. Hiding her tattoo, she tried to ignore him, thinking she might just pass by and continue her day. But the man straightened, his eyes locking onto hers. There was a moment, brief but sharp, where she felt the weight of recognition. It was not fear this time. It was curiosity, measured and steady. He raised a hand slightly as if acknowledging her, and then turned back to his coffee, leaving her with a sense of unease she could not shake. Returning to the shop, she tried to focus on her work, arranging items on shelves and cleaning the counters. But the memory of yesterday and the man outside lingered. She realized that, no matter how much she wanted to ignore it, her father's past was now a part of her present. The day passed slowly. Only a few customers came in, and each time she looked at them, she imagined bikers watching from the corners of the street. She laughed at herself for feeling paranoid. But the feeling did not fade. She felt watched, judged, and strangely protected at the same time. By evening, she decided to close the shop earlier than usual. She needed space to think, to process the events of the past 24 hours. Walking home, she felt the weight of her father's choices pressing down on her. He had lived a quiet life, or at least he tried to. But she was beginning to understand that he had a history that was powerful enough to make strangers freeze, to command respect without a word. Once inside her small apartment, she took out the photo again, staring at her father's eyes, trying to read the story behind them. She noticed the way his shoulders stood firm, the slight tilt of his head, the calm determination in his expression. He had carried secrets, responsibilities, and perhaps even danger. And now, somehow, that legacy was hers, woven into the ink on her wrist. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She froze, unsure who it could be. No one from town ever visited unannounced. She approached cautiously, heart pounding. Through the peephole, she saw a man, older, with a calm demeanor, leaning against the frame. His eyes were serious, but not threatening. She recognized him immediately from yesterday. The older biker, she opened the door slowly. He nodded politely, a small, measured gesture. "I just wanted to talk," he said softly. "About your father." Her pulse quickened, but she managed to stay composed. "There's nothing to talk about," she said carefully, keeping her voice steady. He shook his head. "There is, whether you want to hear it or not. Your father was not just anyone. He was respected, and he left behind more than memories. He left a mark. Some people in the world never forget that mark." She swallowed hard, her mind racing. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's time you knew," he replied. "You carry the same mark. You carry his legacy whether you realize it or not. And some people need to understand that you are under the same protection he offered." She looked down at her tattoo, tracing the lines lightly. For years it had been a symbol, a promise, and now it seemed like a key to a world she had never seen. A world filled with respect, fear, and responsibility. The man studied her carefully. "You don't have to step into it. But you need to know, the moment you walk out with that tattoo, people see it. They know its meaning. They know what it represents." Her heart raced, her mind spinning with questions she had no answers for. She had lived a quiet life, but suddenly the quiet felt fragile. The past was not buried. It had been waiting for her to notice, waiting for the moment to remind her that some legacies never die. She nodded slowly, trying to absorb the weight of his words. "And if I want to live quietly?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled faintly. "Then you do what your father did. Carry it quietly. Let it protect you. Let it remind you who you are. But never forget, some people will always recognize it, and some will always be looking for it." She felt a shiver run down her spine. The tattoo was no longer just a memory of her father. It was a shield, a warning, and a key. And now she understood that her quiet life had changed. Whether she wanted it to or not, the man left, slipping into the night as silently as he had arrived. She closed the door behind him and leaned against it, heart pounding. The quiet of her apartment felt heavier now, filled with unseen eyes and unspoken stories. She stared at the tattoo on her wrist, feeling the weight of her father's choices, the respect he commanded, and the world she had never known. For the first time in her life, she understood that her father's past was alive, and it had found her. The following days felt heavy. She tried to act normally in her shop, but the encounter with the bikers and the conversation with the older man from the night before lingered in her mind. Each time a customer walked in, she scanned them unconsciously, searching for signs, for recognition, for any trace that her quiet world might be interrupted again. She was not used to this feeling. Her father had lived quietly, and she thought she could too. Now, she felt the weight of his hidden life pressing down on her, like a story written in shadows that she had yet to understand. Late one evening, curiosity got the better of her. She pulled out the old photo of her father and the bikers again, studying every detail. She noticed the way the older biker had looked at her yesterday, the careful attention, the respect. It was as if he recognized her, not just as the child of someone he knew, but as a continuation of her father's presence in the world. The realization unsettled her. Her father's life had been more complex than she ever imagined, and now, somehow it had reached her, determined to learn more. She decided to visit the small cafe where she had seen the older biker the morning after the first encounter. The cafe was dimly lit, filled with the smell of coffee and pastries. She spotted him at a corner table, quietly sipping his drink, eyes observing without staring. She approached cautiously. "I need to know more about my father," she said quietly, as she sat down across from him. He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. Then he nodded. "You want the truth?" She swallowed hard and nodded again. "Yes, I need it." He leaned back, his eyes distant, remembering things long past. "Your father was respected for a reason. That tattoo you carry it is not just a mark. It is a symbol of trust, of protection, and of power. It belonged to a brotherhood, a group of people who lived by codes that few understood and fewer dared to break. Your father lived in that world for years, though he always tried to keep it hidden from you." Her mind raced. But why? Why did he hide it from me? Why the quiet life? He sighed. "Because he wanted you safe. That world can be dangerous. Loyalty there is absolute, and betrayal is deadly. Your father walked away, chose a life far from danger, but he never abandoned his values. He protected people, kept promises, and when he left, he made sure the consequences of his past could not follow him or you." She looked down at her wrist, at the tattoo that had felt like a personal connection to her father, but now seemed like a key to a world she did not fully understand. "So, it's dangerous?" she asked softly. "Only if you ignore it," he said. "If someone sees that mark and intends harm, they will know who you are. But if you respect it, carry it carefully, it protects you. Your father left you more than memories. He left a shield." She traced the lines of the tattoo, her fingers trembling slightly. "I never realized how powerful it was." He nodded. "Many don't, until it's too late. Your father earned respect, not fear. That mark is proof of it. People who knew him will recognize it. Some will bow to it. Some will fear it. And now it is your turn to carry it." She thought about the men in the shop, their sudden silence when they saw the tattoo. She thought about the older biker, the cautious respect in his eyes. And she realized for the first time the weight of the legacy she had inherited. It was not just a memory of her father. It was a living, breathing history that had found her. The older biker leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Your father left behind a life you may never fully step into, but the world will know that someone carries his mark. That is why you must be careful. Choose your actions wisely. Your presence alone can command respect without a single word." She nodded, absorbing every word. It was a lot to take in, and part of her wanted to run away, to hide the tattoo, to pretend none of it mattered. But another part of her, a growing part, understood that this was not something she could ignore. Her father's past was not just a story. It was alive, and it had reached her. Over the next few days, she began to notice changes in how people behaved around her. Some avoided her eyes. Some lingered a moment too long, as if trying to place her, and she noticed the occasional whisper that stopped abruptly when she passed by. The world she had known, small and predictable, now felt larger, deeper,
Ow!
and filled with unseen currents. One evening, she received a call from a number she did not recognize. The voice on the other end was calm, polite, yet firm. "Your father left you more than memories," it said. "We need to meet. There are things you should know." She felt a mix of fear and curiosity. She agreed to meet, choosing a small park on the edge of town. The park was quiet, lit only by a few street lamps. She waited, hands folded tightly in her lap, heart pounding. The older biker appeared as she expected, followed by another man, younger this time, with a serious expression. Neither looked threatening. Their presence filled the park with tension. "Your father was a protector," the older biker said, sitting beside her. "Not just of people you know, but of people you will never meet. He carried responsibilities most could not imagine. That tattoo, that marquette, represents everything he stood for. Loyalty, protection, honor. And now, it represents you." She felt the enormity of the words pressing down on her. She had thought her life was ordinary, her father's past irrelevant. But now she saw that ordinary was a shield her father had carefully built, and that shield was fragile. The tattoo was more than ink. It was history, power, and obligation. The younger man spoke next, his voice quiet but steady. "We owe him our lives. He saved us more times than we can count. That tattoo is a reminder. Anyone who sees it knows the debt we carry and the promise we made to honor him. You carry that promise now." Tears pricked her eyes. She had never realized how far her father's influence reached, how many lives he had touched. And now, in some way, she was connected to all of it. She was not just his daughter. She was the continuation of his choices, his honor, his courage. "Do I have to step into this world?" she asked softly. "I just want to live my life." The older biker shook his head. "No, you do not have to. You only have to respect it. Carry it wisely. Your father chose a quiet life for you. But do not forget, the world will recognize the mark. Some will respect it, some will fear it. That is enough." She nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of his words. For the first time, she felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Fear because the past her father carried was not fully safe. Pride because she understood the man he had been, the choices he had made, and the legacy he had left behind. The park was silent, except for the distant hum of the town. She traced her tattoo once more, feeling the connection to her father, to the bikers, and to the world she had never seen. She understood that her life had changed. Quiet would never be the same. The tattoo was more than a mark on her skin. It was a key to understanding her father, a shield in a world she had never imagined, and a reminder that some legacies are too powerful to stay hidden. The days after the conversation in the park were restless. She walked through the town with a new awareness, noticing the subtle glances of people she had known all her life. Some seemed to linger a little too long. Others quickly turned away. She felt the invisible weight of her father's past everywhere, like a shadow stretching behind her, unseen but present. That afternoon, she received a knock on the shop door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Peering through the glass, she saw the older biker standing there, calm and steady as always. She opened the door cautiously. "You don't have to come inside," he said gently, but his eyes held a seriousness that made her step aside to let him in. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice quiet. "I promised your father we would look after you," he said simply. "And that promise isn't just words. Some of us owe him our lives. I am one of them. There are others who might come forward to explain their gratitude, to show you the consequences of his choices." She felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. "I don't want to get involved. I just want to live my life quietly." He nodded. "I understand." But even if you want quiet, the world knows who you are. Your father's actions left an imprint that can't be erased. The tattoo is a sign of what he did, and it signals to people who know him that his daughter carries his mark. A few moments later, the younger man she had met in the park stepped in behind him. He looked nervous, but respectful. "We owe him our lives," he said softly. "He saved us, guided us, protected us when no one else could. We would be dead if it weren't for him. That is why we are here." She sat down slowly, trying to absorb what they were telling her. "Saved you? How?" she asked. "Many ways," the older man said. "From trouble, from betrayal, from people who did not deserve to live but were stopped because your father stood in the way. He never sought recognition. He never wanted the spotlight. He acted because it was the right thing to do. And now his daughter carries that legacy." Tears pricked her eyes. She had always known her father was a good man, but she had never imagined the depth of his influence. The idea that strangers owed their lives to him, that his choices had protected people she would never meet, made her feel both proud and overwhelmed. The younger man spoke again. "We are not here to pressure you. We are here to show respect, to let you know that your father's actions were not forgotten. You carry his mark, and it commands honor. We will protect you if needed. That is the debt we carry." She felt a shiver run down her spine. The quiet life she had built seemed fragile now, surrounded by invisible forces and responsibilities she had never asked for. Yet she also felt a strange sense of safety, knowing that people who had once been protected by her father now stood ready to protect her. For days, she thought about the conversation. She walked through her shop and touched the tattoo on her wrist, feeling the connection to her father and to the men who had respected him. She realized that her father's life had been complex, filled with choices that required courage and sacrifice. And now she carried that weight. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, she decided to take a walk outside the town. She needed to clear her mind, to feel the world beyond the shop walls. She wandered to a quiet road surrounded by trees, the air crisp and cool. The sound of the leaves rustling was the only noise, a comforting contrast to the tension she had been feeling. Suddenly, she heard motorcycles approaching. Her heart skipped a beat. The sound was loud, deliberate. She stopped, her hand instinctively covering the tattoo. A group of bikers came into view, slower this time, careful. They were not hostile. They were observing, waiting. The older biker was at the front, nodding slightly to her. The younger men followed, respectful and alert. She felt the weight of their gaze, but it was not threatening. It was acknowledgement. Recognition. One of the bikers spoke, his voice low but clear. "Your father saved us all. He taught us values we still follow. We owe him our lives. And now, that debt extends to you. We are here to honor him, not to bring trouble." She took a deep breath, letting the words settle. The fear that had gripped her was still present, but it was tempered by understanding. She realized that the world her father had left behind was not only dangerous but full of people who lived by codes of loyalty, honor, and respect. And she, carrying the tattoo, was now a part of that world. Whether she wanted to be or not, the biker stayed for a while, talking quietly, sharing stories of her father, recounting moments when his actions had changed the course of their lives. She listened intently, learning about the man she had known as her father, but had never fully understood. Each story painted a picture of bravery, intelligence, and quiet strength. As night fell, the bikers mounted their motorcycles, preparing to leave. The older man turned to her. "You don't have to step into our world," he said. "You only have to carry his memory, his legacy, and his mark. That is enough. But remember, some will always recognize it. And when they do, they will know that you were under the same protection he offered." She nodded, feeling the weight and the comfort of his words. The motorcycles roared to life, fading into the distance, leaving her standing alone under the streetlights. The quiet of the night felt different now, filled with possibilities she had never imagined. Walking back to her apartment, she traced the tattoo again, understanding that it was more than ink. It was a symbol of her father's life, the people he had protected, and the promises he had kept. It was a reminder that even in a quiet life, responsibility and honor could not be escaped. That night, she lay in bed thinking about the choice ahead. She could continue to live quietly, respecting the mark and the legacy it carried. Or she could step into the world her father had once navigated, facing danger and responsibility head-on. She knew that either choice would define her, and that the tattoo on her wrist was the key to understanding both her past and her future. She drifted to sleep with a strange sense of peace. For the first time, she understood that her father's past was not something to fear, but something to respect. And that respect was now hers to carry. The morning light streamed softly through the curtains, but she felt no peace. The events of the past days had shifted something inside her. The quiet life she had always sought seemed distant now, placed by the weight of choices she had never imagined she would face. The tattoo on her wrist felt alive, a constant reminder of her father, his legacy, and the unseen world that had touched her life. She walked to the shop, her steps slow, her mind heavy with thought. Customers came and went, but her attention was elsewhere, tracing every detail, every shadow. She remembered the bikers, the stories, the respect her father commanded, and the promises they now carried toward her. She realized that living quietly was no longer entirely in her control. The mark she bore was known, recognized, and respected. It had opened a door she could not close. That afternoon she received another visit. The older biker, always calm and deliberate, stood at the door with the younger man behind him. Their presence no longer startled her. Instead, it felt like a bridge to a part of her father's life that she had only glimpsed before. "We are here to see how you are doing," the older biker said, "to ensure you understand what it means to carry your father's mark." She nodded slowly, tracing the tattoo under her sleeve. "I understand more than I ever did," she said quietly. He studied her carefully. "Good. Understanding is the first step. You have a choice now, and whichever path you take will define how his legacy continues. You do not have to walk in his footsteps, but you must acknowledge them. Respect what he built, and you will carry his protection with you." She thought about the quiet life she had planned, the routines, the simplicity. Could she still have that? Could she still walk the streets freely, go to her shop, and live her days without constantly looking over her shoulder? She realized that the answer was yes, but only if she respected the power she now held. The tattoo was not just a symbol. It was a shield, a key, and a promise. Over the next few days, she reflected deeply. She spent time alone, walking through the town, sitting by the river, and visiting places she had avoided for years. Each step reminded her of her father's wisdom, his foresight, and his courage. She understood that he had prepared her for something greater than a quiet life. He had given her the tools to live safely, to command respect without aggression, and to honor the people who had been part of his world. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she returned to the shop and found a small group waiting outside. They were not aggressive, not threatening. They were there to show respect. Each person had a story about her father, moments when he had helped, protected, or guided them. She listened quietly, absorbing every word, every detail, realizing that her father's influence had stretched far beyond what she had known. He had saved lives, made promises, and built a network of loyalty and honor that now extended to her. "You see," the older biker said, "your father left you this world not to live in fear, but to live wisely. You can choose to remain quiet, to carry his mark privately, and you will be safe. Or you can embrace the legacy openly, learning from it, using it to protect and guide others. Either choice carries responsibility, but neither diminishes who you are." She thought of the quiet mornings, the calm routines, the simple life she had always wanted, and she thought of her father, his strength, his foresight, and the countless lives he had touched. She realized that the quiet life could still exist, but it would never be ordinary again. She would carry the legacy quietly or openly, and let it shape her in ways she had never imagined. After hours of reflection, she made her decision. She would live her life quietly, honoring the mark she carried, and letting the world see her father's influence only when necessary. She would respect the power, the history, and the protection embedded in the tattoo, and she would carry it with pride and caution. The bikers, sensing her resolve, nodded in understanding. They respected her choice, recognizing that she had embraced the responsibility without needing to step fully into their world. The legacy was not diminished. It lived on in her respect, her wisdom, and her quiet strength. As they left, she traced the tattoo one last time, feeling the connection to her father, to the men who owed him their lives, and to the unseen world that had touched her. She realized that living quietly did not mean ignoring the past. It meant respecting it, carrying it, and letting it guide her choices. In the days that followed, the town returned to its usual rhythm. She moved through her life with a new awareness, a quiet confidence, and a sense of safety that came from understanding the power she carried. The tattoo remained hidden most of the time, but she never felt the need to hide from its significance. It was her shield, her connection to her father, and a symbol of a legacy she could carry in peace. And so, she lived her life quietly, safely, and with the quiet strength that came from knowing that her father's mark was not just ink on skin, but a living, breathing protection, a testament to courage, honor, and the choices that define us. She had embraced the legacy without losing herself, carrying forward the past while shaping her own future, and understanding that some legacies, once awakened, never truly leave us alone. The days after her decision were calm, but filled with reflection. She moved through the town with a quiet sense of purpose, carrying herself differently, more aware of her surroundings, more attuned to the subtle signals people gave her. The tattoo on her wrist felt like a living presence, not just a symbol of her father's past, but a guide, a silent protector that reminded her of responsibility and strength. She continued to run her shop, tending to customers with the same quiet friendliness. Yet now she held herself with a confidence that came from understanding her father's life and choices. People noticed it even if they did not understand why. There was a calm authority in her, a presence that commanded respect without effort. Occasionally, the bikers she had met before passed through town, sometimes stopping at the shop, sometimes simply nodding from a distance. Their presence was reassuring. They were reminders of the world she could never fully enter, but that she respected and honored in her own way. She greeted them warmly, acknowledging their stories, their loyalty, and the unspoken debt that connected them to her father. One afternoon, a young man approached her as she stepped outside to check the shop window. He looked nervous, fidgeting with the edge of his jacket. She recognized the hesitation in his eyes, a mixture of respect and fear. She nodded at him, signaling that it was okay to speak. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said quietly. "My brother. Your father helped him. He saved him from something I don't even want to remember. I didn't know how to reach out, but I wanted you to know." She felt a lump in her throat. The realization that her father's actions had ripple effects beyond what she had imagined touched her deeply. She nodded gently. "I understand. Thank you for telling me." He smiled faintly, relief washing over his face. "It means a lot to see that his legacy, that it continues." She smiled back, a mixture of sadness and pride filling her heart. It was a reminder that her father's life had been more than ordinary, more than quiet. It had been filled with choices that mattered, choices that saved lives and protected people who would never forget. Weeks passed. She settled into a rhythm of quiet strength. She took long walks in the evenings, sometimes along the river, sometimes through the edges of the town where the streets were empty and the air felt free. Each step was measured, thoughtful, a reflection of the calm confidence she now carried. The tattoo on her wrist remained a quiet reminder of her father's past, of the power and responsibility she now understood. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, she found herself thinking about the choices she had made. She could have walked away, ignored the legacy, hidden the tattoo, and pretended the past did not exist. But she knew that would not honor her father, nor would it respect the lives he had touched. Instead, she chose to carry it quietly, to live her life with awareness. To let the mark guide her without controlling her, she returned to her shop, closing the door behind her, and leaned against the counter. The memories of the bikers, the conversations in the park, The stories of gratitude, all of it settled in her mind like pieces of a puzzle. She realized that her father had given her more than a quiet life. He had given her understanding, respect, and a way to navigate the world with integrity. That night, she sat by the window, looking at the stars, feeling the cool breeze on her face. She traced the tattoo lightly, feeling the connection to her father, to the people he had protected, and to the world she had never fully seen. It was a source of strength, a symbol of protection, and a reminder that some legacies are too powerful to remain hidden. She thought about the future, about the choices she would make, and the life she wanted to lead. The past was a part of her, embedded in the ink on her wrist, in the story she carried, and in the quiet strength that now guided her every step. She understood that living quietly did not mean avoiding the world, but embracing it with awareness, carrying forward the values her father had instilled, and honoring the lives he had touched. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and she continued to live her life with the quiet dignity and respect that had become her new normal. The tattoo remained hidden most of the time, but it was never forgotten. It was a part of her identity, a bridge between the past and the future, a reminder of courage, honor, and the enduring power of choices made with integrity. She knew that her life would never be completely ordinary. The world her father had touched was still out there, alive, watching, waiting in subtle ways. But she also knew that she could navigate it not with fear, but with the quiet confidence that came from understanding the legacy she carried. She had embraced her father's past, respected it, and found peace within it. And so, she lived each day with awareness and gratitude, quietly strong, carrying forward the lessons, the protection, and the honor her father had left behind. The tattoo on her wrist was a constant reminder, a symbol of a life lived with courage and integrity, and a guide that would always be with her, silently shaping her choices and protecting her as she moved through the world.